The tension in the Caribbean is quietly rising, and this time, Moscow is at the center of it. Recent reports suggest that Russia may transfer Oreshnik and Kalibr missile systems to Venezuela, a move that could redefine the balance of power in the Western Hemisphere. According to Russian lawmaker Alexei Zhuravlyov, Moscow has already delivered several divisions of S-300VM Ante-2500 air defense systems to Caracas, along with Pantsir S-1 and Buk M2E batteries. Together, these weapons form one of the densest defensive networks in Latin America. Zhuravlyov added that no international law prohibits Russia from providing long-range weapons to its allies, including the Kalibr cruise missile, a system tested in Syria and Ukraine with deadly precision. But this isn't just about defense, it's about power projection and message sending. At the same time, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has reached out to Moscow, Beijing, and Tehran requesting urgent military assistance. Facing a growing U.S. military presence in the Caribbean, Maduro asked for missiles, radars, aircraft maintenance, and logistical support, everything his struggling armed forces lack. According to the Washington Post, Maduro sent a personal letter to President Vladimir Putin, asking for help in restoring several Su-30 Mk-2 fighter jets, overhauling radar systems and engines, and purchasing 14 missile sets. He called the Su-30 the most important deterrent Venezuela has against the threat of war. Yet according to insiders, fewer than 5 of those aircraft remain operational today. Beyond the battlefield, Russia and Venezuela are deepening their alliance. A new strategic treaty has been ratified, expanding military, political, and economic cooperation. In July, Venezuela finally opened a munitions factory in Aragua State, a project that began nearly 2 decades ago but was only completed with Russian help. Moscow has also secured rights to explore Venezuela's oil and gas reserves worth billions of dollars, giving Russia both economic leverage and logistical depth in the region. Meanwhile, the Oreshnik system, already deployed in Belarus, could soon appear in Venezuela, giving Caracas advanced radar coverage across the Caribbean and northern South America. But this partnership goes beyond Moscow. Leaked documents show that Maduro also contacted China and Iran, requesting radars, detection systems, GPS jammers, and drones capable of striking targets up to 1,000 kilometers away. It's a picture of a government preparing for something bigger, or perhaps trying to deter it. Now imagine if Russia truly sends the Kalibr and Oreshnik systems. With Kalibr's range exceeding 2,000 kilometers, Venezuelan launch sites could theoretically reach across the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and even parts of southern U.S. territory. For Washington, that would cross the strategic red line. Under the Monroe Doctrine, the United States considers any foreign military deployment in the Americas a direct threat to its security. And a Russian missile base, just 2 hours from Florida, would be seen as a provocation unlike anything since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The response would be swift. The Pentagon would likely reinforce its Caribbean presence, deploying naval groups, surveillance aircraft, and satellites to monitor every Venezuelan base. The U.S. might call for emergency UN sessions, expand sanctions, and pressure allies like Colombia and Brazil to host counter-deployments. But a direct military strike? Unlikely. Washington would prefer containment over confrontation, using intelligence, cyber warfare, and economic isolation to weaken Venezuela's operational capability. For Russia, it would be a calculated move, a strategic mirror to NATO's expansion near its own borders. If the US can deploy missiles in Poland or Romania, Moscow could argue it has the same right in Latin America. China and Iran would almost certainly support the narrative, portraying the US reaction as double standards of Western policy. Inside Venezuela, the propaganda would write itself. The homeland is defended. The empire must think twice before invading. But behind the rhetoric, the risk would grow. A single radar lock, a false alarm, a misread maneuver, and the Caribbean could become the world's newest flashpoint. If Kalibr and Oreshnik truly reach Venezuelan soil, it would redraw the strategic map of the Americas. Russia would gain a forward presence near U.S. territory, a powerful reminder that global influence is no longer confined to Europe or Asia. The U.S., in turn, would likely respond by fortifying regional defenses, deploying Aegis Ashore or Patriot systems in allied territories, and strengthening Southcom cooperation across the region. Once again, Latin America could become the battleground of great powers, not through invasion, but through deterrence and positioning. For now, no missile has yet been shipped, but the message is clear. Moscow is willing to challenge Washington, not in words, but in distance, precision, and reach. And in this new era of global tension, Venezuela may become more than a partner. It may become Russia's westernmost military frontier. Russia's interest in Venezuela isn't about ideology, it's about strategy. By deepening its presence in Latin America, Moscow sends a clear message. It can project influence globally, even near U.S. borders. The transfer of systems like Kalibr or Oreshnik would be more than a military move. It would be a geopolitical signal. Russia is reminding Washington that containment can work both ways. Every radar site, every training team in Caracas would serve as leverage in future negotiations. This isn't escalation for the sake of conflict, it's balance by presence. For Venezuela, this partnership fills a gap left by the West. Years of sanctions have weakened its military industry and isolated its economy. Moscow offers what Caracas needs most: technology, maintenance, and legitimacy. Restoring Su-30 Mk2 fighters, repairing radars, or obtaining missile systems. These steps rebuild deterrence, but they also help Maduro project control at home. It's a demonstration that the government still commands international partners willing to stand beside it. From Caracas's perspective, this cooperation is not aggression, it's survival under pressure. In Washington, the challenge is clear but complicated. The U.S. cannot ignore a potential Russian missile presence so close to its borders, but a strong reaction could validate Moscow's strategy and further militarize the region. American officials will likely rely on containment and intelligence rather than confrontation. Surveillance flights, diplomatic outreach to neighboring countries, and regional defense coordination will quietly intensify. For the U.S., this is about managing risk without creating a crisis. Neighboring states are watching closely. Colombia, Brazil, and Guyana would almost certainly strengthen coordination with the U.S., focusing on radar sharing and maritime surveillance. But others like Cuba, Nicaragua, or Bolivia might welcome closer ties with Moscow, viewing it as a counterweight to American dominance. Latin America's foreign policy has long been shaped by great powers, and now it faces a new test: how to maintain sovereignty in a new era of external competition. This isn't an isolated case. Russia's outreach to Venezuela mirrors its broader strategy, establishing footholds outside its traditional sphere. From Africa to the Middle East and now Latin America, Moscow seeks partnerships that expand its global relevance. For the United States, that means the end of uncontested influence in its own hemisphere. For Venezuela, it offers breathing room and bargaining power. And for the rest of the world, it signals a transition from a unipolar order to one defined by multiple centers of power. Whether or not Kalibr missiles ever reach Venezuelan soil, the message has already landed.